good deal. I think we'll get going here. So, welcome to my session. This is in track 2, meaning it's a technical session, but I'm not a developer. I tend to pretend I'm one, but I'm not one. I work for the AppUp developer program, and when I heard that we were going to do a bit on HTML5 or going to be doing more focusing on HTML5, I thought, oh, let me give it a shot. You know, I used to code web pages a while back. You know, I know how to do HTML tags and stuff like that. So let me see if I can actually do something, not really being a formal or educated developer. So in terms of the title of this Canvas element in creating HTML5 games for dummies, I'm the dummy. And so I was able to do it. So I think if I can do it, then you can do it. So, and if you're an experienced developer out there, I know one, especially in HTML5 here, there's probably a better way than what I'm going to show you. But what I thought is, it'd be, to get my perspective might be interesting as somebody who's just getting into it. So like I said, I'm not a developer. I'm the community manager for the AppUp developer program, and I'm host of the Intel AppUp show for developers, co-host. Myself and Ron Peters host that show. So if you want to follow me, you can follow the links on the website there or on my slide here. And that last link I'd love you to check out. It's the AppUp show link. And we do a show every couple of weeks, and we try to provide great information for developers. So, the agenda here, really briefly at a high level, at least at a level that I can understand, I'm going to explain what Canvas is and what it can do. And then I'm also going to talk about the basics of Canvas, Canvas element, and at least my approach to actually drawing shapes and objects in HTML5 using the Canvas element. Then we're going to get into coding, and I'm actually going to show you some code that I put together for my game. We'll probably get into the first two. I don't think we'll get into the other two, and then we'll do Q&A. Okay, so getting into it. What is Canvas, or as it's called, the Canvas element? If you're familiar with Flash at all, and you've seen Flash, or you've played around with Flash, or Flex Builder, and you've seen some of the action scripting that can be done that actually allows you to draw stuff through a scripting language, Canvas is really similar to that. In fact, this is a great blog post here. You could take a picture if you want of this URL. I didn't shorten it to make it easier for you, but it's a great post that shows you the code differences between Canvas and ActionScript. And this little caution sign was drawn in both ActionScript and Canvas. And it's really interesting to see the differences. In some instances, ActionScript seems easier, more direct, and in other instances, JavaScript or Canvas seems to be easier and more direct. And they're also close enough that you can read them side by side and understand exactly what each are doing. So I'd say check that out. Another thing to check out is this site here, or this page, the bit.ly Canvas cheat sheet. This is a cheat sheet that's going to give you everything you need to know, or kind of a quick glance of all the commands that you would use for coding in Canvas. So let me go to this real quick. That might be a little easier to see. So if you want to do something like drawing a line, its line width, and then the point size. You can say what kind of cap it is. Is it going to be a butt, round, or square cap? Fill styles, things like that. So this is a great kind of cheat sheet to use to refer back to, because if you're like me, you're not an experienced developer, you're not going to remember this stuff as you go on throughout the rest of your day and do the normal stuff that you do. And you'll come to this stuff very so often. So this is a great cheat sheet to help you out. So you can go on the web and find all sorts of amazing examples of what HTML5 and Canvas can do. Here are a couple that I found on the web that I think start to expose some of the neat things that it can do. So this one here I will try. Here's one that just shows some photo effects. You can take this photo, you can make it lighter, you can make it darker, you can change the color values of the photo, all sorts of things. So this is just taking an image that you might have on the web or a file that you might have locally, and it's allowing you to affect that image much like you would do in Photoshop, but it's essentially using HTML5 in Canvas in order to do it. It's a really cool example of photo editing, photo manipulation. This is another great example. A lot of people have heard of HTML5 video. This is actually showing HTML5 video, but there's also some other cool effects that you can do. This is using Canvas here to take that object and to break it up into pieces and then animate those pieces all the way around. This would be very hard to do in a lot of other development languages. And you see the movie is still playing. It's still playing in all those little squares. So this thing, I think, is absolutely amazing. And here's a game. People talk about games, and this is one I like. See if I can actually try it here. So this is showing, you know, enemies, and what you do is you just type your way to shoot the ships on the screen. So it's really cool. The effects are really nice. You don't hear the sound here, but it's got really nice sound. I'm assuming they're using HTML5 audio to do that. So it's a beautiful looking game, and exactly the kind of game that you would expect on a mobile device. Okay, so now I want to, hopefully that gives you a little idea of what HTML5 and Canvas can do. So it is pretty powerful. And now I'm going to show you, my approach to actually drawing things and filling them in and animating them on the screen in Canvas. So first off, this is kind of where I started. This is a base template here. And again, you can take a screenshot of this. This is just an HTML file. If you've done any HTML at all, this should be pretty familiar with. You just have all your tags, like your header tag, your script tag, your body tag. A couple of things here to get Canvas going is you're just going to set up a variable for all of your Canvas commands. It seems to be the popular word is context. I don't know why it's context. Sometimes I've seen it as like abbreviated, but context seems to be the word. So you establish a variable called context. And then in a function, what you do is you say, first of all, that's just declaring the variable, and then you say what it equals. And what it's going to equal is this bit of stuff here. Again, I don't understand it. I grabbed this code from the web. But what I do understand is that this is now going to assign all the commands and libraries that, like you saw in that cheat sheet. It makes those now all available to the context variable. So every command that you write in Canvas is going to start with context, like context dot stroke style to set the color of any line that you're going to draw. So everything's going to start with context, and you'll see that in my code. And then you're going to have your Canvas tag, and essentially in your HTML, you're just going to add this in. This is essentially the game. This is saying, all right, all the things that I'm coding are going to go into this area here. It's 1,000 by 1,000, which is what I set here. So all the things will fit into that, and that's my game, that's my app. So the code that I'm going to show you, this is the base of every bit of code that I'm doing. Okay, so let's talk a bit about how you draw in Canvas, because it took me a while to figure it out, because I'm just not used to thinking this way. So I found this process of saving where your origin is, which is kind of the 0, 0 coordinates of the space that you're working within, moving them to draw your object someplace on the screen, and then drawing that object, and then restoring that origin back to where it had been before. So it looks something like this, and I just kind of animated this in PowerPoint to actually show you guys how this works. So an origin, pretty much in any area of the page, is usually in the upper left-hand corner. So my origin 0, 0 is going to be there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate or move that origin to someplace. So use the context.translate command, to actually move that object to some place on the screen. So 100 pixels over and 100 pixels down is what this is saying. I'm setting my stroke style to red, so when I draw something, it's going to be red. I'm going to begin drawing the path, and then what I do is I move to 5.5. Now notice 5.5 is in relationship to the origin that I moved. So if I moved over 100 down and 100 to the right, this is in relationship to that. So now I'm moving and drawing a line to -5.5 and around again, and this is one way to, very long coded way to draw a square. But you see, it's just a simple dot-to-dot pattern, you know, and essentially you can draw all sorts of shapes if you just kind of remember what you learned in grade school on how you do dot-to-dot. Essentially, move here, draw a line to there, and you can draw some really cool shapes. Then I end my path, I stroke it so it now has the red line around it, and then I restore, which means is I move my origin back to where I had saved it before, and that's going to be very helpful because when I draw my next object, I'm going to do the same process again. If I hadn't done this, then I'd be drawing the next object in relationship to my last object, and that can get very messy, and I've done that a number of times, and you forget to do the restore. So here's the process, that at least that I figured out in drawing is. One, save your origin. So you make sure that Canvas knows where that origin is. Then move and rotate the origin. So you can move your origin to wherever it is that you want to draw your object, and then you can also rotate it. So if you want to draw your object at an angle, you can rotate your origin. That's really kind of rotating the canvas is what it's doing. And then you're going to draw that object at that location and that rotation. And then what you're going to do is restore back. You're going to move that origin and that rotation back to where it was before. And then you're going to do this over and over again for everything that you draw. And that allows you to draw all sorts of objects wherever you want them, at whatever angle you want them. Okay, so if you want to draw something more complicated than a square, you can, again, follow this dot by dot pattern. So what I like to do is I just take a 10 by 10 grid. You can use like a piece of grid paper, something like that, and draw an object out. And then note where all the points are. -3.2, this is -4.1. Again, this is all in relationship to the center here. So I'm going 2 to the left, and 3 to the left, and 2 down. So that's what it is. So you just draw it out. Now you know exactly that dot-to-dot pattern, and this is what the code will look like for drawing this object. Now this would be awesome and great if everything that you're going to draw is 10 by 10. But it's not. I want this ship not to be 10 by 10. I may want it to be 200 pixels big. So what I do is, I'm sure the developers know this trick for a long time, just something I figured out, is I changed all of these numbers that I put here into decimal points. You see over here, I've got -.3 and .2 and -4. And what I'm doing is I'm multiplying them by a variable, which is my ship size. So what I can do is I can say my ship size is going to be 200. And then I've got the same exact code, and that would draw all this, but it would draw it at 200 pixels by 200 pixels rather than 10 by 10. So very simple thing to do. Okay, so I'm going to go into the coding part of the program right now. So hopefully that'll work. But if you want to check out exactly what I've got going on here when I'm coding, go to these links here. AppUp Show 7 actually walks you through what I just showed you there in my code, or in terms of that demo. And then the AppUp HTML5 game is a set of articles that I've written that actually walk you in more detail of the game that I developed. So use those as references. In my legal disclaimer, so we won't get to that just yet. So I'm going to go to coding, and you can use Notepad. You can write HTML in anything. I'm just using Dreamweaver here because it tends to tell me if I made a mistake or something like that. Okay, so What I want to show you is, I've got some stuff here. This here is exactly what I had here. Okay. So that bit of code that I show you is going to be right in this example. But let me render this real quick so that we can see. Okay. So this is actually what this bit of code does. You can see my ship here, and you can see also this rectangle around it. And I'll walk you through how I did that. So I set up some variables to begin with. Again, I declared context. Context is the variable that I'm going to use for all of my canvas commands. I set up a variable for my game width and game height. So if you look at this, it's 1,000 pixels there, 500 pixels down. My ship size here is 100. The spin is the angle that I want to have my ship at. And where I'm positioning my ship is 100 pixels over and 100 pixels down. So I just set up these variables. You can set up more variables if you wanted to, but those is really what I need in order to do this. Then create a function. This is JavaScript stuff. If you need to learn JavaScript, plenty of sites to learn that. But essentially, I've got my function called drawShip here. What it's going to do, the very first thing is it's doing that one thing that I said earlier, is it's going to establish all of the canvas commands and assign them to the context variable so that I can call upon them. And so the first thing that I'm calling upon is, just like I showed you, is I'm going to set the color of the lines that I'm drawing, which is red. So context.stroke style equals red. I can say orange, magenta, black, purple, lime. I could say all sorts of names, or I could use the, I think it's the hex number for each color in HTML. Then I'm saving, because I just want to make sure that I remember where the origin was before. And I am translating, which means I'm moving my origin to position ship X and ship Y, which was 100 by 100. So I'm moving over here and then down to there. And my spin, I'm now rotating my canvas. But right now my spin is set to 0. I could set it to 90. Let's see what happens here. So now you see that the ship is rotated 90 degrees just by doing that. Okay? And then I begin path, I draw my object. And as I showed you before, I'm using the decimal versions of the numbers that I put together here, and I'm multiplying that by my ship size. So my ship size is 100. If I set it to 50, let's do that again and see what ends up happening. So now my ship is smaller, and it's rotated at that 90 degrees. Okay, stroking it, which then says there's going to be a line for the shape that you draw, that you drew. It's going to use my stroke style, which was red, which I said before, and then it's restoring my origin back to where it was before, and then it's drawing a rectangle here. So this is the simple way to draw a square: is context stroke rectangle. And again, you can go to that cheat sheet to find all the different kind of shape commands that you can use. So let me get rid of this restore here, and you'll see what ends up happening if I forgot to do the restore. So you'll see that the square or frame that I created for my game is now drawn in the wrong place and at the wrong angle. Because what ended up happening is I translated, remember, the translating is, I translated here, but I didn't restore that translation back. So the next object is drawn at wherever I positioned my canvas last. So that's why you save and restore. You want to make sure that you save the origin to its original position. You then translate and rotate your canvas to draw your object, and you restore it back so that when you draw your next object, it's where it needs to be. If you don't want, you don't have to do a restore, because if the next object you want is in relationship to the last object, then that would make sense. All right. So let's do something a bit more interesting with this. Let me show you rotate ship. So this is the exact same ship, essentially the exact same code, but now I've got some animation going on here. So there's something a little bit more cool. This is now starting to look like a game. So let's see what's different here. Okay, I have the same variables that I had before, and I've got a function. I just renamed it to falling ship rather than draw ship. But I've got something new here. It's called set interval. Set interval falling ship, comma 25. What that is going to do is it's going to continue to run my falling ship function into infinity. It's just going to keep looping that over and over and over again. The 25 is a pause. It's going to wait 25 milliseconds before it does it again. If I change this number, it's going to increase or reduce that animation. So if I change it up to 60, it would slow it down. I could change it to 0, and it's going to go as fast as the processor can actually run through all the functions. So in my falling ship function, exactly the same thing that I had before. Still have my context game, get context 2D. Stroke is red. But here's something new. Context clear. So I'm clearing in the rectangle shape the same area as that I've drawn here. So what that does is every time I redraw this, when it runs the function again, it erases the space. That way you don't see all the different ships that I've drawn. It creates the illusion of motion because I'm drawing lots of ships, but I'm erasing the previous ones. There's my save again. So I'm saving my origin, which my origin is here. It's at 0, 0 this time. That's where at least I started the origin. And then so I moved to that position. I rotate it. Again, my rotation is it's at 1 degree. Draw ship. So what I did here is I just created a separate function called draw ship. So this is, again, the same thing that we've been looking at this whole time. So I just put it in its own function, and now I'm just calling it here. I'm doing my restore again. I'm now drawing that rectangle around. But now I'm doing something else. I'm changing the angle and the location of my ship every time we run through this function over and over again. So one thing here, spin is minus minus. So it equals itself, the last value, minus 1. So we started at 1, then we went to 0 degree, and we're kind of moving left, counterclockwise rather than clockwise. So let me change this to plus plus. And then you can see what happens. So now it's rotating the other way. Also, my ship coordinates are increasing as well. So the x coordinate and y coordinate are increasing to the right and down. So every time I draw it, it's moving to the right and down. And then I've got an if statement. This is just a conditional statement that says, all right, if my ship x coordinate is greater than my game height, then set the ship x and y coordinates to 0, which means that once this object, center of this object anyways, it's greater than where this line is drawn, then this object is going to get redrawn up here again. And it's just going to continue to run through this over and over and over again. Okay, so let's see what would happen if I got rid of the restore here. You get something like this. You get a mess. Again, this is why you want to make sure that you keep track of where your canvas orientations are each time. So if you start to see something like that in your coding, you know that you either forgot to save or you forgot to restore somewhere along the line. And you can debug that and figure it out. Okay, so let's see this played out a little bit more here. This is the full game that I've written. It's based upon an arcade classic called Omega Race. That was one of my favorite games of all time when I grew up. So this essentially is going to do all the things that I've already showed you. I'm just doing different versions of them many different times. One thing you notice here is, if you remember that set interval I set, and I set it to 25, one of the things that I noticed with HTML5 is that it's really going to depend on your CPU power and essentially other things that you might have running at the time. So you might have a different experience on a lower end CPU than a higher end CPU. So what I did is I built into this game here is, it says change game speed 1 to 6. So, let's go back here. Oops. So we can look at that set interval again. So if I look at set interval, when I press the key 1, this is going to change this to 0. If I press it to 2, it's going to change it, I think, to 10. 3 is 30, and all the way up to 60. So you'll see what actually ends up happening. I press 1, which should go super fast. Right? So you see my animation is sped up right now because I changed the game speed. I hit 6, I changed that to a 60 millisecond interval. So now the game's a whole lot slower. I thought that this was a friendly thing to do because you might have a low-end netbook, or you might be running this on a mobile device, or you might be running this on a core processor, and you might have a different experience of that game. So this just allows the user to control that game speed that they want to have. So this is the game. This is exactly the same ship that I did before. So what I've done is I've just drawn other things like these enemies and created a shape for the missiles, and then I added some event handlers to say, okay, when I'm pressing keys, draw something else. And then you notice here when I hit the edges, I'm using that same conditional statement that I showed you, except that instead of going back to 0, 0, is I just move in the opposite direction, so it creates a bounce effect. And then I added a bunch of other things. It's just a lot of other conditional statements, like is when there are no more enemy ships left, then go to a new level, and it's going to create more enemy ships, and it's going to have it go faster and faster and faster. There's some other things I can do in this game, like I get a high score at the end of the game, I see that, but I haven't written it to a local file. So one of the things I would like to do is take this and use encapsulator so that, and take advantage of that API so that I can store data locally, so that either I can have checkpoints in the game or that I can create a high score function in the game. So hopefully that gets you started with HTML5 in Canvas. It was, like I said, I'm not a developer. I just looked at some code online to how to draw and how to animate, and I had an idea of the kind of game I wanted to create based upon an arcade classic that I used to use, and I was able to create that game. I fumbled around with HTML5 for a little bit, so it took me a couple of weekends to do it, but not very long. So I'll go to Q&A here, and with that I will leave it on my legal notice and disclaimers, which you can read. Oh, and be sure to fill out your cards, your evaluation cards. Hopefully I did all right. So any questions? Was this good? Was this helpful? Okay, all right. You guys are, how many people are developers here? Okay, mostly. All right. So, how many people? I would assume that you're more skilled than I am. So, you know, how many have developed in HTML5 or HTML before? Okay, good. All right. So, real simple. No questions at all? I covered the whole spectrum of Canvas in. All right.
Yeah, just one technical question came to my mind. You said that you're using a delay to control the speed of the ship.
Right.
Is there any other way of doing that it becomes platform independent? Whatever machine you run it on, it remains on the same speed? Something like timer or something? Like
yeah, there's a set time as well. So it's the other way around. So rather than, I'm trying to think of what it is, rather than waiting until the time. So I don't know, Rita, if you know the answer to this, if there are alternatives to set interval when you're doing animation.
Right. So we were using like timers and stuff like that because timer always gives you
Yep,
the
yep.
tick exactly after the same time span. So
Yep.
in
Yeah.
that case, whatever processor you're using, it's going to be the same speed you're going to get.
It does. Well, I tried that, and I didn't get the desired results. So I did try that, and I think what the deal is, it really depends. In my game, I'm doing a lot of for loops.
Right.
I'm just doing a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen before then it goes to the next thing. What I found out is actions didn't complete when I used that. So I might like be shooting a ship, and then the ship didn't explode because it didn't allow that code to complete before it did the next thing. So I think that was the downside of using that method.
Yeah, we are dummies. We don't ask questions.
Okay. Well, good. All right. So I've given you the links to check out. Let me go back to that real quick. So again, AppUp shows you a lot of what I showed you already, just in a condensed version of it. It also has links to the files. It has my complete game. It has the rotated demo as well as just the simple drawing demo. And then this next one, the AppUp HTML5 game, is a set of articles that walk you in more detail of what I did to create the game. So it will actually walk you through collision detection and stuff like that. You know, how I created the effect of the ship that would then float as I moved it across the screen, stuff like that. So